I'm the observer of my reality. I'm the storyteller. And so when I looked at it that way, it just shifted the way I looked at the world. And as you heal certain things, you can get breath and look at the really difficult things, like that relationship with father, like the abuse of men. And you start to see all of these patterns where you're like, oh my gosh, I was replicating this relationship with my dad with other men still to this day, you know? And when you finally get to that place where you can look at it now, after what was that, the 10, 15 years of work, not until a year or two ago did I get to this place. So from 2004 to 2021, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I had cataloged enough information through conversation that when I got to that place of healing this, healing that, healing this, healing this, falling back here, in 2014, I was still suicidal and had a plan to attempt suicide. My wife found out about it. That was a big moment too. That's 10 years after that hug from my father. I wasn't better, but I just had cataloged an impact moment that would serve me later when I finally got ready to heal, when I finally got ready to look at it.
Is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. I am super excited to talk to Eric Beach today. He's a fellow veteran, business owner, father. I can't wait to kind of dig into his story a little bit and learn as much as I can from him. And hopefully, as I'm sure will happen, you guys take some great nuggets out of this conversation as well. So, Eric, if you can, go ahead and introduce yourself, your family, and tell us a little bit about your businesses in your case.
Sure. My name is Eric Beach. I am 13 years married to a wonderful wife named Jenna, who is, I call her my lighthouse, and I'm her, I guess I'm what lights the lighthouse, and I'm a lamplighter, which that's a whole different can of worms. But we have two children, 9-year-old, just turned 9 in November. So that's new to me. And then a 12-year-old daughter. So two daughters, girl dad through and through. Served in the Army in 2003, went to Iraq, got out in 2005, and didn't have a family at that time. So went through some life, went through some struggles, which I'm sure we can get into as we talk. And then met my wife after about 4 months removed or a year removed from one of the worst days of my life, where I really didn't think I had much to live for, and kind of got to a really interesting spot where I finally opened up to the world, and I met her. She was given to me in that moment, and we found each other through some interesting circumstances. So a lot wrapped into that marriage, and it has never stopped becoming a source of inspiration for her to inspire me and me to inspire her, for her to drive and push me to grow, and for me to grow, heal, and then push her to chase her dreams. So it's become this collaboration of love and support that has brought us these two children, and giving that gift to them so that they don't have to walk through some of the stuff I did, or at least without the information that I have, because they're going to walk through stuff. But I want to give them everything I've learned from an early age so they can have the tools to navigate some of these more complex emotions, these complex experiences, and how to define their course through, what I'm doing with my business, my modern myth. It's my coaching platform. Basically, I'm thinking about, we own three things in this life. It's our mind, our body, and our life story, and how we use our mind and body writes that life story. So let's try and write the best one possible, which is separate from any result or any specific goal destination. It's just continuing to move towards things, pause, pivot, and pursue as necessary, instead of flailing about in these drastic changes in life. We have to get still, and we have to understand the emotions that come up and what they're telling us to do, because it's all maps. And I'd like to, dig into that with my kids, with my clients, and with anyone who wants to talk life, because I like to go deep. So I guess I'll leave it there for a little introduction.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that we're going to be able to dig into a lot of stuff there. I'm looking forward to it. And I already want to chase some rabbits, but I'm going to hold off on those rabbits for a little bit, try to go back to them later. But tell me a little bit about what it was like for you growing up. Tell me about your father, maybe even your grandfather, just so I can understand a little bit about a background of where, Eric Beach started.
It's a wonderful story that wasn't wonderful for a long time. And it's one of those situations where I was not terribly abused by my father, but I was not connected to him. He had a very big temper. And this is leftover traumas from his father, who, beat him with the metal end of the belt and things like that, named his twin brother Dudley because he was a dud. And so, there's these just terrible kind of, maybe they don't look horrible in the grand scheme of tragedies in the world, but they create this narrative of diminishment. And we mask over those things with big emotions and lots of coping mechanisms, but we don't realize that's what they are. Carl Jung said, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, it'll control our lives and we'll call it fate. Yeah. This is just who I am, damn it. Like that was my dad's favorite. And you people just need to love me as I am. And I'm like, man, that sucks. I was always afraid of him. He was the kindest, funniest, goofiest, weirdest guy. But because I was so scared of him in our house, it was hard for me to see the great man that he was beneath all of that. Because as you know, and my wife has said from me, you don't really see PTSD unless you're in the house with the veteran. And this was the same thing with my dad. People would tell me how you're so lucky to have him. He's like the kindest, most servant-based man in the world. And I'm like, you don't know, and I made key decisions to prevent myself from being around him as much as possible. Lots of reasons for it. Were they correct? Probably not. But it's what I did. It's what I chose as a child who doesn't know what this world is. And so I regret now. He passed away 10 years ago. I have regrets with him because I didn't get to know him. I didn't get to know all of the greatness that he was because I was so protecting myself from the fear that I had about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, and calling down his wrath. I just would rather shrink away and let it pass, And there were moments later in life where I started getting glimpses of who he was through what his father did and the traumas of the generations, and stories like my dad had a big voice, and I mean booming voice, powerful voice. And I remember he used to sing opera, not well, but he would do it goofy, but he loved it. He loved opera, and he would and just be silly when he was cooking, right? And I cherish that. It's one of the few things that I can really be like, oh, Dad,
Yeah.
And then I learned a story about when he was in elementary school, Catholic school, and the nuns were getting ready for a Christmas concert. And they listened to him sing, and the people sing, and they told him he wasn't allowed to sing because he wasn't good enough. So he needed to lip sync through the concert, and he never stopped lip syncing. Even when we would be in church, I remember before that memory just being, it's so odd because he would just mumble and he wanted to sing so badly, but he wasn't allowed to. He couldn't let himself because he made a key decision too. And because of that key decision, he didn't go on paths that he needed to go on because he wasn't allowed to give that creative energy expression. So it turns into something toxic and poisonous and comes out as violence. He used his voice for powerful things or incredibly destructive things. But it's because his gift was not allowed to flourish. And so I can see that now, and through me speaking to you today and just being passionate in every area of my life and believing I can pursue creative greatness or just creativity in general is the way that I redeem him. When I go to Ironman, when I would do that, he loved cycling. I hated it when I was a kid because that's what my dad did. But now I got to be an adult and I get to redeem him through going to France, riding Ironman France, where the Tour de France that he watched every year and annoyed the hell out of me. I got to ride those courses after he passed away, and I got to feel anger in the mountains as I climbed them, and anger at my father, and I got to feel him yell at me, and I got to ask him why. And it's only when you get to those places of extreme exhaustion that you can have those spiritual moments and those conversations and then keep going instead of rolling over and walking away. I got to strengthen myself, and through that, see who he was in his purest. His fundamental core of who he was powerful and good. But the world stacked a bunch of traumas on top of him to diminish him under the rubble of chaos, of confusion, of an identity crisis, where he was never able to live his life as himself. And that breaks my heart now. So the regret is I didn't get to see him in his fullness. And my call is I see it now. I see it come down through the generations. And I get to stop it. I get to show my children a different path, and I get to show them a different father. I homeschool them for a similar reason because I want them to understand these lessons. And when they were in school, that compression was already beginning early elementary. And I did not like it. It might be good for some, but it's not good for everyone. And there has to be other paths. And I am just passionate about taking each individual as an individual and deciding and helping them decide what path is right for you. How do you protect who you are like my dad couldn't? And now I can. And so that's basically, in a nutshell, what, it was with him. And I love him, but I didn't for a long time.
Wow. I think that, so I had a very similar feeling with my dad for a while, with trying to really know who he was. And he grew up in a very terrible household with a very terrible stepfather as well. The stepfather, I used to pat him on his head every day every time we'd visit, I'd pat him on his head, say, "See you later, Grandpa." And then the last time I ever talked to him, and the last time I ever touched his head, was when he said, "If you touch my head again, I'll break your arm." And then at that age, I was pretty young, I mean, I'm young enough to be patting Grandpa on the head to say, "See you later," right? And I looking back at it now, knowing what my dad went through and having more conversations with my dad and having a door opening into what that looked like, I could say, wow, like that should have been an example to me to understand where he came from. But of course, at that age, there was no understanding that. And I didn't analyze that further until like much longer. So I want to ask you kind of when did you start to realize that's, and I'm looking forward to this because you've already gone down this path a lot mentally. So I'm hoping we can tear into this a lot for anybody listening who hasn't done this, to analyze who their dad is or where they came from, especially those who are holding animus against their father. When did you start to notice or understand the life that your dad had growing up that led to what he did with you?
I think there's an element of the military that brought that on. He told me everyone should spend 2 years in the military. He was drafted in Vietnam, and that always stuck with me. And then when I went to the military, I came back from Iraq, and that was the only time I remember in my life him embracing me and saying, "I'm so proud of you." And I remember that really found a way into my heart. And it was a moment of, this is what I want. I want a relationship with my father. What child doesn't? I think that's pretty universal. But what's blocking me from it? And that's where I started, loosely dipping into that, is that felt so good. And it was from such a pure place. And maybe going to war isn't what you want to be proud of your son for. It's a confusing place, but he was proud of me, and that's what mattered. And then I started to see qualities in myself that were him. And I used to hate those things. Like, I can't be that. I can't ever do that because that's what my dad did. And if I do that, then I'm just like my dad. And then I'm like, well, yeah, but what? I'm only looking at the bad things. Like, I don't want to yell at my kids, even though I have. I don't want to make them feel scared. So now I apologize every single time that I step out of line and I get reactive. So they know. I never knew that from my dad. I never knew he was sorry. He always told me he wasn't. We never had that conversation. I never knew what he thought of me. My kids know what I think of them, and they know it's not their fault. So there's those elements that I start doing. But then I'm like, if I look at all these bad things that I don't want in me, I have to accept that the good things that were him are in me too. And so what are those? And what I found out was I was doing the exact opposite of all of his goodness. He was a servant. He volunteered every day at the Humane Society after he retired. He was incredibly good with finances. He took care of our family. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was serving myself through drugs and alcohol. I was seeking comfort. He sought discomfort at every turn. You go on a camping trip and he spent 5-6 hours cleaning the tarps when we'd come home. And I'm like, geez, give it a rest. He would make me wash all the rocks on our property in the summer, and it took all summer to do. And I just hated it. And I was like, as soon as I get a chance, I'm not doing any of this, because he was so meticulous and so disciplined. He would do exercises in the living room. So I stopped doing all exercises and ballooned my weight up, didn't take care of myself. I was doing everything he would do that was good. I wasn't doing any of it. So I was only doing the bad things. And when I realized that, if I'm avoiding the bad, well, what happens if I look at the good? And then I realize, holy hell, I'm my dad. But I get to redeem all of the best parts of him. And as I do that, I get closer and closer to fulfillment, to peace, to happiness and joy.
So that started then, you said, coming back from Iraq. How did you walk down that path? Because that's, I mean, there's a lot that you had to have worked through. I mean, that doesn't sound like a quick embrace, and then you went to understanding kind of the good or the bad of your father. But how did you kind of walk down that path to really start to learn and analyze? Because that takes a lot of self-reflection of sitting down that 99% of people do not do. So what caused the self-reflection to be able to sit there and do that, and analysis of your father to be able to sit there and do that?
Well, that was 2004 when that happened. I get out in 2005. it was an impact moment in 2004, which we have all these impact moments, and I catalog these things unconsciously. It's not something I ever intended to do, but intense moments stand out, whether they're good or bad. So you're cataloging all these life experiences. That happens as one of them. Then I go on, I get out, and I'm lost, still not even thinking about my dad in that way or trying to, because I know I'm right, and
of course.
to medicate, drugs and alcohol, losing jobs, just doing that whole thing. And in 2008, I attempt suicide. And that was, 4 years after that moment of redemption calling to me. You still can't answer the phone. Like, you don't know what these moments are. I just now in hindsight know that they're just universal messages that if we care to understand how to look at them, we can. And they didn't leave me. And so I go to rehab, I get out, and I still don't change that part of my life. I'm trying to get cleaner and soberer by not putting drug dealers in my phone. I get moved to a different city as my parents leave, and I start making better choices here and there, but not with family. And it starts to be this thing where as I do one thing different, I do another thing. And that opened me up to meeting my wife. And I had to get to a place. I had used cocaine a week before I met her at church. And then I was done with coke because she showed me something so beautiful that I didn't think I deserved, but she gave it freely and pursued me when I was at my most broken, where people used to run away. So she reflected this to me, and that opened my mind. And she saw all my hurts and she challenged me. And then so I started to pursue healing in 2009 because I'd been to therapy, but 2009 was my dedication to healing and service dogs, going to Save a Warrior, warrior healing programs, things like that, starting triathlon. I'm starting to do all of these things, still not really addressing my father, but trying to think about and learn. As you get to a certain age, maybe 25 or older, you start to be curious about your heritage. And that's where you learn the lessons about the belt, about the comments. I just learned about my uncle this year. So I'm still learning about the heritage of the family, the lineage. And so you start to stack these and it starts to shift perspectives. And then at Disabled Veteran, when I got my service dog, my mind was completely open to the spiritual world of this, that, we are not our vocation. We're not our name. Am I now me? Or when I'm 75 and I look in the mirror, am I still me? Or because my face looks different, am I no longer me? No, I'm the observer of my reality. I'm the storyteller. And so when I looked at it that way, it just shifted the way I looked at the world. And as you heal certain things, you can get breath and look at the really difficult things, like that relationship with father, like the abuse of men. And you start to see all of these patterns where you're like, oh my gosh, I was replicating this relationship with my dad with other men still to this day, And when you finally get to that place where you can look at it now, after what was that, the 10, 15 years of work, not until a year or two ago did I get to this place. So from 2004 to 2021, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I had cataloged enough information through conversation that when I got to that place of healing this, healing that, healing this, falling back here, in 2014, I was still suicidal and had a plan to attempt suicide. My wife found out about it. That was a big moment too. That's 10 years after that hug from my father. I wasn't better, but I just had cataloged an impact moment that would serve me later when I finally got ready to heal, when I finally got ready to look at it,
One of the things that I like to talk about a lot, being a veteran as well, and we have 22 veterans a day, that horrendous statistic that gets thrown around. At this point, almost just like nonchalantly gets thrown around, sadly. But one of the things that it sounds like you would almost agree to this experience just based off what you're saying. But a lot of times the way I look at it is so many veterans, and the military does this on purpose because it makes sense, put their identity in being whatever they are, right? A soldier, a Marine, an airman, a Navy SEAL, a whatever it is. Like, that is your identity. And then the second you're out and it's gone, like, okay, well, now where's my identity? I'm not wearing that uniform anymore. I'm not doing anything. I've got no mission in front of me anymore. Like, what's my goal? What's my focus? What's my purpose? So, now it just becomes an internal battle that people tend to, self-medicate with, drugs and alcohol and various, or sex or pornography or whatever. They're medicating somehow. to wash away, quote unquote, whatever it was that they or to try to find their new self, whatever it is. I knew I had a direction I was trying to go with this, but it's so difficult to kind of. You got to a point at bare minimum twice in your life, 2008 and 2014. 2008 that you attempted, 2014 you were still suicidal, you said. So there was a lot of work, obviously, that happened between 2008 and 2014. When did you, was 2014 when you really started to change over and start to lose that, did you find the new identity? Did you find, what was it that finally triggered a change in you to say, hey, I no longer have to go down that path. I no longer have to look down that road?
The 2008 is where it started. And I realized at 2008, it's an identity crisis, like you're saying, because my squad leader, who I was in the same room, same places that he was, he, finished with 20 years. And then 6 months later, he was dead. He'd committed suicide. He was in school for criminal, whatever you call it, criminal defense, criminal justice degree, because we were combat armed. So maybe we can become a cop or whatever. And he was probably with kids, and it just didn't feel like a good fit, and it wasn't the same, and it's not the same. But he took his own life. And when I attempted suicide, I remember the night, because the inciting incident was so benign that it would shock you. It was a mutual friend making a certain comment, a joke, a teasing comment to me. Could have been a little bit more direct and a little bit more real, but it was nothing. But I was in such a state that when I left the military, they stamped no longer useful. And I lived that. That's what I saw, and I kept in my head, as I'm no longer useful if I'm no longer here. So why should I stay here? And that's where drugs and alcohol allowed me to feel useful. I could make people laugh. I felt free, and I didn't really, but it gave me the illusion that I was, because I was really a prisoner, but it was a different pain. It was a pain of a substance versus the fact that I don't feel like I know who I am and why am I even here. And so 2008, I decide, I'm ending it. Very cool and calm, which is the weird part, is that hit me that night. And then an hour later, I was home, I was just dead inside. So I was like, well, this is it. And I wrote sorry on a piece of paper. Went for it and survived. My sister was there, and I stumbled downstairs with my clothes on backwards and not talking, and collapsed. And then she took me to the hospital, and I woke up there. And after that, you're in the psych ward, and you're medicated, and you're doing puzzles with people that are highly dysfunctioned, and you understand them at this root level, because you're just like, puzzle piece here, there. And it was this surreal moment of being stripped down to your rawest form, is just a being with a mind and eyes. And from that sobriety, that moment of, it was intensely medicated, but I was clear enough to understand, all my function is to do this puzzle. And there was purpose in it. And I remember that. And as the medication wore off, I wasn't healed, but I started to see I was beginning to again put on the armor of life experience to create this identity. And then that realization was, I wasn't trying to kill myself. I was trying to kill the false self. I was being somebody. I was wearing these masks, and I was tired of it. So it was my misunderstanding of my spirit's call to free myself. And we confuse it as a way to kill ourselves. And that simplifies it. But that's what I felt. And from that day forward, I realized it. I was still suicidal, but I was alone. And that was the other part, is isolation, silence is what kills. If you and me talk, and I'm depressed coming into this call, if we're talking, I'm going to end this call not feeling depressed, because I wasn't alone. And that's the key, is I realized I can't be alone. When I met my wife is when I realized that, because she would charge towards me when I had a moment, not a flashback, but when I had someone lights off firecrackers, I jump behind a table and I'm embarrassed. She would hug me instead of laugh at me or get freaked out by it. And then I wasn't alone. So I began to tell her things. You can't talk about your experience, otherwise you're a liar. Otherwise no. Don't go on the internet and blast how awesome you are, but you have to tell somebody. Agreed. And through that communication, I realized that every time I felt like I didn't want to be here, it was that false self again. It was, I need to figure out who I am. And in 2014, when I had that plan, I watched her break and fall apart. And I watched, my world as it was with two beautiful children and this wife who's just broken because that's her worst fear. And I've been lying to her for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that is like that I would lie to her. I lost all of the trust. All of her trust was gone. But still, I wanted to be with her. And I watched how much they cared about me. And I knew that must be for a reason, because they wouldn't just put themselves in that position of pain if they didn't really love me. And I thought, well, I must be lovable. So maybe they see something that I don't, but I promised them, I said, this is my dedication to you, is that I'm never going to stop. I'm always going to be here. I'm not that I'm not going to ever feel like I don't want to be here, but I'm never going to stop, because since 2008, I've met a wife who is amazing. I've had two beautiful children. I've done Ironman France. I've been in movies. I've filmed. I've done things I never believed possible. Almost all of the coolest things that I've ever done in my life happened after 2008. And as I stack those and have done these things, it amazes me because, one, there's value in it and I'm excited and proud of myself. And two, I'm still here. I'm still me. And those are separate from who I am. But I know the potential's there. And so any kind of darkness that comes, I just know I need to build my network and have people speak truth to me in those moments. And then I have to go and figure out, because if you tell me, oh, Eric, you're great, you're good at this. Okay, thanks. But then I have to go believe it. I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, I love you until I believe it. And I need to focus on all the blemishes on my body and on my face and stare at them and say, I love you until I believe it. And that takes months sometimes, and it takes tears and crying. But if you continually tell yourself that story and you continually seek those answers and say, I'm not going to stop until I find out who I am and start living as that person, well, there's still time on the clock. So let's go. And that's been my process. Even though I still get suicidal ideation, I'm just building new tools to tell myself, whoa. What story are you telling yourself? Yeah. Oh, no longer useful, huh? It's some flavor of that. Always is, buddy. Yeah. Has been since you were a kid. Yeah. Are you? Let's gather some evidence.
There's a book called The Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, and it throws a lot of that. It's basically a letter. Have you ever heard of it by chance?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So it's basically for those who haven't, it's a book that's like there's a student of the devil, right? That's a devil student, and now it's his uncle Wormwood, I think it's called, writing these letters. Hey, these are the things that you need to say to these people to win them over onto the devil's side. These are the things you need to say to this person to make them feel not valuable. These are the things you need to put into that person's brain. And the more we realize, and like as you're reading that book, and I think C.S. Lewis even said that as he was writing that book, he had to like take a break because of the amount of mental toil that it took to just bring out that stuff. And as you're reading it, you're like, I have totally told myself these words before. And you just reiterated it to yourself that you like, these are the same stupid words that I've put in my brain before, and they're not true and they're not there, which is the purpose of that book, is for us to think through what the devil's trying to do to us to pull us over to his side and take us away from the joys in life, the love of life, the enjoyment of being with our kids. Like that stupid thing that comes into my head that says, hey, you're not doing a very good job as a father because look at what's going on right now. Right? No, like you may have made a mistake. That doesn't mean you're not doing good. That doesn't mean you're not a valuable father or a valuable husband or a valuable person. But our brains will play so many tricks on us. There's one thing I wanted to pull back to. You'd mentioned. Let me see if I can find the right spot for it. I'm the observer of my reality. Tell me what that means.
That just means no matter what I'm doing for my job, my vocation, I can change my name, I can change my hair color, I can wear new clothes, I can work out real hard and get big muscles, I can whatever I want to do. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I'm just the observer of this. I am operating this story, this reality, and I'm writing it. Like I'm in my own movie in some ways, and I get to craft it. So nothing I do. Well, let me tell you this. I got down to like 160. I was super fit and I had this body image thing, and I looked in the mirror and it still wasn't good enough. I didn't attain what I wanted. And so I stopped caring. I observed the result that I wanted and I reacted to it in a negative way, which is the sum total of what we are. That's what we write our story. We observe our situation, whether it be a visual thing or something up here, and we react to it. And those reactions write the story. And so I gave up on that, and eventually I went from 160 to 235 and was still the same me, still depressed, just like I was. I just looked different. And then I started to say, okay, so let's stop looking at getting under 200 pounds. Let's stop trying to do this fitness plan or this sport, whatever it is. And let's just start thinking about why I'm making choices that I'm making. Why am I reacting in this way? And started focusing on learning what emotions mean and different things. And I input that into my computer brain and I start writing a new story. And all of a sudden I lose weight and I don't care. I don't care. I notice that my knees don't hurt as much. So I'm observing that my knees feel better. And then I'm observing that I can get around more without getting out of breath. And that's cool. But it's not because I focused on transforming my body. I was looking at my psyche. I was looking at the operating system, how I was observing this and what stories I was telling. And so the more I fell in love with that and accepted the fact that I'm just observing this, and this body will change. I'm going to get wrinkles. I'm going bald up top. Doesn't matter because I'm still me, and I'm observing insecurity about that. I'm observing insecurity about this. I'm feeling, it's just observing. And when I can do that, I can make really good choices. Don't always. So I have to remind myself of that one too, because I get carried away. And if it's like being out in the ocean and you're on a surfboard and you're observing waves as they go by, because you're looking for the right one to choose. And once you observe that right one, you go ride it. And so that's kind of what we're doing in life is you're just observing the emotions as they rise and fall. And hopefully you're making the best choice possible. You're choosing to ride this wave of joy, or you're even analyzing it because, well, why I felt joy when I was doing drugs. Well, that's not good. Certainly that's not my body telling me I should do this. No, I now observe that it was just rewarding me for connecting with people, for doing something that was habitual. Because the body likes habit, likes routine. It's just if you don't observe what your routine is, all of a sudden you go into some negative routines, but your body loves that security. So I guess that's more or less what I mean with that.
Okay. So there seems to be I don't know, a lot of people seem to lean towards stoicism for men. Men should be very stoic in everything that they're doing and all this stuff, right? But yet the things that you and I've already been talking about, there's a lot of emotional tie to that kind of takes away from the ability to be stoic. I tend to just in the way my brain works, be very logical. It's very rare that I go to my emotional side of my brain, just like in almost anything. My kids will be one of the few things that can quickly turn to the emotional side, but still most of the time the brain is very logical in how I'm saying things to them, which then I can see the emotional response that my logic gives. So like I'll throw logic out there and I see it on their face. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that was received emotionally, but said logically, and I'm trying to always look for the balance between that stoicism and emotional connectedness. And I'd love to hear your perspective on on really stoicism versus being attached to those emotions and understanding those emotions, because you seem to kind of bounce between the two of those.
Indeed. And one point was when I was a kid, the only compliment I got two compliments as a kid. One was that I was stoic from my Scandinavian heritage. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's not stoic. Stoic means something different. It doesn't mean unemotional and not complaining about your problems. But that's what my parents said. My mom said, was I stoic and I could eat a whole pizza by myself. Those are the two compliments that, that stuck with me. So stoicism is something that I love. I also love emotions. And the reason I'm not a stoic is because there are some tenets where I won't say that. I'll say this. When you are a stoic, you are emotional. You're just able to wave, by the ones of the emotions that you don't want because you're not reactive. So the most balanced hero in a movie, Obi-Wan Kenobi, not really an emotional guy, but that's because he was so wise and so balanced that he knew like you weren't going to throw him off his game. And to me, that's kind of the iconic, what we all are trying to go to. And the way we get there is through emotions. I believe emotions are the language of God in some experience, or the emotions are the language of spirit, whatever verbiage you want to put on that, because it's something we don't know, but we're being told. And it's a language we don't understand. And if we understand it, we can take that cue, that reactivity, and we can say, why did that bother me? Because someone said to me, if, Stoics, you can take criticism, it's fine. True. I can take criticism. Sometimes I can't. And so right now I'm in a process of trying to figure out, well, why can you criticize me here, but not here? Because there's some level of security I have here and insecurity I have here. What's the threat that I feel? Because you criticize me about my speaking versus my jujitsu, or, whatever the case may be. So a stoic, the goal is stoicism to a certain degree. And I think the path through to get there is understanding what these emotional cues are, because I don't believe you can just read a book on stoicism and be stoic. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, you can't just, I attempted suicide. Now I'll never do that again. I know why I did it. Silly me. No, there's years of work. And I just think emotional intelligence is the path to stoicism.
Okay. Yeah. And I like the way you phrased that with like stoicism is not having the emotions, but not reacting to them. Right. And that's, I think that, the military kind of forces you down that path, especially if you've gone to war. The downfall is if you don't handle it afterwards, then you react to every emotion, until you've figured out how to handle them. That's a difficult, path to go down. But when you're talking to your kids and you're raising your kids, how have you kind of taken your experiences, your understanding? It sounds like they've been exposed to a lot of this. Like you've had some of these conversations with them already. But how are you trying to expose them to understanding the emotions, reacting versus responding, and working through some of this? I know that you mentioned homeschool. So are there extra things that you teach during homeschool? How are you kind of going down this path with them so that they can kind of understand a better way to live versus how, you and I did growing up?
Yeah, I do follow curriculums, but we also have the philosophy, we don't have it. We follow the philosophy of unschooling. Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called? I think. Yeah.
Yep.
So essentially it's life as a teacher. And so life's going to give you plenty of opportunities to emotionally react and to create stories that aren't real in your head and blame someone, accuse someone. So you're the victim, the accuser, or the martyr. And those are three masks that we wear that lead to terrible things. And so I have those conversations with them through a bunch of ways. But one of them is nothing's off limits. If you have a question about anything, and it gets uncomfortable, I'm going to tell you, it gets real uncomfortable. Or sometimes you're like, should I be saying this? Should we talk about this? But you can soften it to a level that I feel is age appropriate. But my theory on that was I have kids that come over and they swear a lot. My kids I won't yell at them if they swear. They don't swear, but they know what swear words are. They know the purpose that they have or how they're supposed to be used, because every word has a purpose. And we just change that purpose for whatever reason. The military, we swore every other word, right? It was just curse words. And it took the power of what that curse word was for and took it away. And so for them, having the freedom to know what this is, and if they hold up a middle finger, I'm not going to spank them or something, they find no reason to do it. And then they look at their friends who curse all the time and they're like, it's weird. Is that the only word you know? And so through this process, I've had people look at me like I'm crazy and disagree. And over years, they go, how did you do it? Your kids are some of the best kids, the most well-behaved kids I've ever seen. And I'm like, I've talked to them about war. I've answered every question they have about my drug addiction. My parents never wanted me to know that my dad did drugs. Man, I wish I would have known, because I might have felt safe enough to talk to him about them. But instead I had DARE program, which did nothing, because I sure did a hell of a lot of drugs. And my kids know what they are. They know alcohol. They know all this stuff. And they know why I did it. What I was through my life story, I know why I did it. And I can explain to them why someone does, so they don't look at addicts as these terrible, horrible people. They look at them as people who are suffering. Mm-hmm. And I hope to instill that, where we're not looking to vilify specific people, but more assess behavior. Why would someone do this? So our questions usually revolve around, why would someone steal? Why would someone go to a school and shoot it up? Is that why you don't want me in school? And I get to say, no, that's not really it, but it does scare me. And I don't know if that's a rational fear, because you can do statistics and all this stuff. So I have to address that. I'm afraid to let you guys walk around the neighborhood, because the world tells me I should be. And so I'm scared, but it's only because I love you so much that I don't want anything to happen to you, but I can't insulate you. I have to let you go out and make choices for yourself, and that might hurt. And I'm going to be here to love you. And you just need to promise me that no matter what, that you're going to come and tell me the good, the bad. And to this point, they have. And sometimes those conversations, man, they have been hard. to listen to without emotionally reacting myself. But I made a commitment that I am the place that they can bring anything to. And I'm not going to vilify them or punish them because I believe conversations trump consequences, because I still speed. I just get better about not getting caught. The kids still swear. They still do the naughty things. They just get better about not getting caught to avoid the consequence. They don't understand why they're not supposed to do it. And I always have those long conversations. And sometimes it feels like it's not working. But when I see it working is because they're interacting with people outside of our house with complete respect and understanding that other families do it different, and we're going to respect their rules when we're in their environment. Yeah. That's life. You can't just go to your workplace and have face tattoos, if that's not appropriate for the workplace. Like, there are restrictions. And so my kids know those boundaries that, hey, here, we're good. Going to grandma's? Probably not. So as long as you're maintaining those boundaries, we're good to keep going the way we're going. We don't need to adjust course. And so that's kind of how I've created that safe space, not in the way that like we aren't going to deal with feelings. Yeah. And the second part is ownership. When my kids fight, I don't discipline each kid traditionally. I ask both of them to find out what they did to further this fight, to cause this. Oh, your sister hit you. What were you doing that made her upset? It wasn't right that she hit you. I'm going to talk to her, okay? But what did you do that maybe made her feel like that was her only result? And they don't necessarily like it because they just want to be told, go attack the sister, Yeah. But in that, they know that I'm going to be like, well, let's take ownership, because you can only fix what you did to bring this fight on yourself. And now your sister has to be aware that she needs to do something different before she gets to a place where she wants to hit you. This is all about mutual respect and taking ownership of what you can do different in the next situation to not create the situation that led to you getting hurt. So that's the other part, is extreme ownership. I can tell you all the wisdom I have, but until you understand that you can change your own behavior and assess what led to this situation and not just be like, yeah, but they, no, but they, and somewhere in the middle is the truth, that whole thing. That's what we go for.
So for a father out there who's listening to this and says, boy, I really wish that I was able to do that with my kids, like kind of what sort of starting point, maybe their kids are already 12 and they've gone down a path that is not so fruitful in those conversations, because we could all have a tendency to lean, especially I think dads, towards the authoritarianism side, and this is what you're going to do and this is what you did wrong, instead of trying to like have those conversations. They just go straight to the consequences. For somebody who wants to start going down that path, what kind of recommendations would you say, hey, this is kind of the way that I would start doing it, especially if you've been a dad for a little while?
The first thing I would say is you have to take a look at why you chose the things that you chose, because until you understand why you did what you did, and it's not even bad stuff. Like when I yelled at my children, I felt my dad coming out of me. And so that was a conversation. I promised I would never do this if I had kids, and here I am doing it. You have to understand that about yourself so that you can then bring that conversation to the kids, because you have to explain yourself. Saying I'm sorry is nothing. But explaining why you did what you did is not to excuse yourself, but how it wasn't their fault that you did this and you were operating under what you thought was the best thing to do. There's power in that, but it has to be authentic. It can't be forced. There's no template. There's no call sheet that you can, hello, children, I'm sorry for the following things that I did in the past. No, you can't read off a script, man. This is like, it might take years. It might, and you might be only able to do it in doses, because your goal, again, is not flailing about randomly to hopefully get a new result. It's about pausing, saying, I don't like this. What am I doing that I don't like that has caused this situation? And then pivoting, which is, sitting with yourself and trying to reflect on, like, why do I do the things that I do? Why do I think this is going to work? The reason I yelled is because I wanted it to stop, because I was feeling feelings. Some of those feelings were I'm failing my children. Some of those feelings are people are going to judge me because my kids are misbehaving. And I don't want to feel that. It's going to attract attention. And when you get attention attracted to you, little Eric, who's scared of his dad, bam, bad things happen. You have to get granular on what it is that you're trying to produce out of this reaction. I just want the behavior to stop. Well, I'm negating the fact that these children are trying to experience the world and they don't understand it. And I'm the guide. So there's ownership that you take. And that's the first pivot. And the second pivot is creating a safe space. I don't like that word. because it just had such a negative, pejorative connotation.
Especially recently.
You need to create a space where, this is our new way, and you have to give when you're ready, and you have to be ready for this. And I would highly recommend you do some exercise, go running, lift weights, get a fitness routine going, just so you can get that energy out and think about these things. Because there's going to come a time where you sit down and you say, and I did this every week with my kids, how am I doing as a dad? What's something I did great this week, and what's something I'm really not doing so good at that you did not like? And then they'd say, like, you really want me to tell you? I'm like, yeah, you have to be ready, because kids don't lie.
Yeah.
And when that comes, you're taking that as you wanted to know this because you really do care. And then the pursuing of that is the trajectory, and it's continually redressing that. It's not a one-time fix it all. It's constantly dedicating yourself to that path over and over, because kids will test you. They want security more than anyone. They want stability, and their environment has to equal love. So if love equals being yelled at by dad and running away and hiding, that's what safety means. That's going to be a lot to undo.
Yeah.
I know it, because I never got that chance with my dad. And so I didn't feel safe enough. So I have to feel safe. I have to feel seen. I have to feel heard. And I have to know that I'm not going to have the hammer falling down on me like it has before. And then I also have to accept that it may never work, because it's not your choice.
Yeah. All
you can do is make your choices and hope that you can lay down a bed of openness that your kids can make a choice too. And that's a painful reality. And I have friends that are in that same boat, that they're just saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm doing everything I can to create a loving environment for my child, and it's their choice. And some people get really mad at me when I say that too. I've had some people shut me down and get really aggressive, but it's true. And then their kids left, and because they wouldn't change. And I'm just saying, sometimes it's hard to see the world through their eyes, but we have to. We have to. And it's not to excuse them or remove accountability from them. But if we don't understand where they're coming from and how they perceived it, and I'll give you one example before I quit that. I create that open environment. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how I'm doing. And my youngest daughter, she told me one night, she was crying, and she said, Daddy, why didn't you want me? Why don't you want me? And I said, what? Why would you ever think that I don't want you? And she said, yesterday I heard you say that when you met Mama, you didn't want kids. It's like, oh, baby girl, no. I just said being a family, having children was never part of my plan. And when I met Mama, I said that, and she wanted 5 kids. And that was almost a deal breaker. But now that I have them, I'm so glad I have you two. You guys are life to me. And I'm so proud to be your father. And that opened her up. But if she had not said that to me at 5, 6 years old, she grows up thinking that I never wanted her. And that's that silence. If they can't have a voice to express, and I'm not going to be safe enough to not react to them, but to speak truth, we're never going to get that world map, redesigned by age 8 or 9, where it's a lot easier to do. And then after that, it starts to get harder, but it's still possible. I'm 40 and I'm still rewriting my map, and it's very possible, but it becomes more of their choice and less of a conversation. Kids are great with conversations. They make some big changes when you have real conversation with them.
Yeah, I think the way you started that is extremely important. It's one of the reasons I start my podcast all the time, asking about like how you grew up, right? Because if you can start to understand how you grew up, it can give you some insight into why you're leading your family the way you're leading them, or even why you're leading your company the way you're leading it. Like, am I leading it by force the same way I was taught? Am I leading it by complete laissez-faire because I was tired of the force that I was treated? Like, did you run away from what your experience was? So when you could sit down and actually ask yourself that why question, why is it that I reacted the way I did? And I've tried to have that conversation with my sons. It's like, Daddy did that because of his previous experiences, because I put this into a box. I hated whatever it was, right? I know I've got like 5 examples that are, but it's like, I hated that when I was younger, so I can't stand to see it now. Like I think I talked about it a couple podcasts ago, but I struggled, I still do struggle when my son cries, because I cried a lot when I was a kid. And it was always something that was looked down on by my dad. So then when I now see my son cry, it brings me back to that. And I'm like, no, we're not going to cry about this stuff. And like, I have to step back and go, okay, well, why is he actually crying? What scenario have I created to make him cry? What scenario has he created in his brain that is causing him to cry? And let's try to dissect that a little bit, because if I can understand that the reason why I've been reacting that way, then it's going to be easier for me to sit down and have that conversation with him. And that was one of the more recent ones I've had with him is that exact conversation. It's like, it hurts me to see you cry, because I know how bad it was for me, because I would come home from school sometimes, just bawl my eyes out because, Johnny said this at school and I feel terrible about it. I'm a horrible human being, and I would just cry. And I was just my mom around. So there wasn't a dad there to kind of put his arm around me and say, hey, bud, look, life sucks sometimes, and this is how we have to work through it. I just had a mom that was there to, hey, buddy, I'm so sorry, and like I needed both sides, and I never got both sides. So now, it's a little bit different story. I want to go to you mentioned victim, accuser, martyr, and I want to tear into that a little bit, because that sounds like there's somewhere, I guess, quote unquote, fun we can go with that. I want to tear that up a little bit.
So it goes back to the ownership conversation and the mask we wear. A lot of what I do is based in the mythopoetic tradition, which is a lot of like Robert Blake, it's Robert Moore, it's the king, warrior, magician, lover, Jungian archetypes and all that kind of stuff. And I just love movies. I'm a screenwriter and I love the story. And I think there's just so much encapsulated in these microcosms of story that we can learn and apply to our life. And those are three of the masks. And there's the hero, which is what we want to. And if we're not being the hero of our story, we're being the accuser, the victim, or the martyr. And the victim, pretty self-explanatory, helpless. Nothing's my fault. And there's nothing I can do to change my circumstance. The world has done this to me, and that's going to keep you stuck, but safe. You can be safe in misery, which sounds weird, but the victim is very comfortable in the security that is their misery. And to convince yourself you have no way to change it keeps you there, keeps you safe. So as long as you wear that mask, you're not going to change, and your life is going to be the same. So you get your security, you get a little variety, because some of the pain you experience might shift from day to day, but you're still secure that you're going to get it. Then you feel significant, because when you feel pain and victimized, people go, oh, you poor thing, and we need to help you. And there's plenty that will rally to it. So you get three of your basic human needs met, and probably more. And as long as you have three of those human needs met, you can have an addiction to it. And so we get addicted to this. We don't realize we're doing it, but that's what we do. The accuser is the active version of the victim. The accuser is someone who, it's not their fault, but it's your fault. You're the reason. The victim is, I just can't do anything about it because everyone's against me and I don't know what to do. The accuser is like, it's because of the establishment. It's because of religion. It's because of society. It's the billionaires. If I didn't have this, then I would be this. And you're holding me down. And it's the active version, which gives you the illusion of significance. It gives you the illusion of power, that you're doing everything, but you're really doing nothing, because all you're doing is making the adversary so big, you can never overcome it. If you believe the enemy is big pharma, and that's the only reason that you can never do what you want to do in your life, you'll make no movement on it and you'll feel okay about it. Because, hey, the monster was too big. So what was I going to do? I gave it my best shot and I fought. Damn it. No, the martyr is the holiest of the masks we can wear, because it looks like we're sacrificing ourselves. We're serving everybody else. So we must be good. We're saving people. The problem is you're not saving yourself in any kind of way. And that looks honorable. But what you're doing is avoiding looking at the pain in your life because you don't want to address it. My dad played the martyr a lot of times. He went and served everybody else. He served his mother. He served his sister. My dogs, when they were dying, he would carry them around the house and he would, put hydrogen peroxide in the wounds. And he was a caregiver. At his core, his fundamental core was caregiver, which becomes a martyr when you're doing it to avoid, well, this is just who I am, damn it. And a martyr is pain. That they feel pain, but they've convinced themselves that as long as I do these things, I don't have to deal with the true pain, which is the trauma I've experienced, the blocks in my life that I could remove if I was willing to look in the darkness. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to serve, always be too tired, too strung out to do anything for myself, and I'll sleep convinced that I'm honorable when I'm not, because the hero still serves.
Mm-hmm.
But they face resistance, they face discomfort, they lean into those things, and they keep going. They keep trying, they keep hoping for better. And when they do it well, they say, what else is out there to do? And there's service in that. Service and growth are the two highest human needs that we have. So you can see when you're looking like you're serving, that's a need of the spirit, not a physical need, but a need of the spirit. So you're hitting it. So that's the most intoxicating, almost one of all of them. And it's sad because it does look good, but that caregiver needs an outlet for self as well. So those are the three basic masks. There's more archetypes and stuff, but those are the first three that we need to look at. Hey, how are you operating? Oh, I was an accuser today because I'm not addressing why I feel the way I feel. I'm just blaming Steve for making me pissed off because he sucks. No, it takes more than one person to make this world go around. Yeah. My modern myth is not going to heal everyone in the world, So it's just ways to not deal with the reality of change in us.
Awesome. So I want to go down now into your businesses a bit. There are probably 40 other trails we could go down based off what we've already talked about, but let's go into your business a little bit. You have My Modern Myth and Project Echelon. I think you said that My Modern Myth is your coaching side of the house, but tell me a little bit more about. Let's go into depth about both of those, and then let's go into depth about those.
Yeah, so Project Echelon I didn't mention, but the whole thing about that is in 2014 we started as a buddy veteran and civilian. I was, like I had said, on that suicidal path, and that was when I promised my wife I would change my life, and so I started to and got into triathlon because that was something I was always curious about. And I was like, I can't go in the military, but I always want to. As we talked about, it's that identity thing. So I can't go in the military. So what do I like about it? What do I miss? Because I don't really miss the military. I don't miss 4 o'clock formations and all the random raking of rocks and whatever, patrolling cigarette butts. But I miss the physicality. I miss the challenge. I miss the clear task, clear goal, clear win. And so, well, what can I do? I can get into fitness. I'm not really happy with what's happening with my body anyway. And so I started to do triathlon, but I didn't know anything about it. And my wife's high school friend, her husband is a professional cyclist. So my wife's like, hey, give Eric a call and see if he can help you. And so he absolutely did. He loves veterans. His sister is an Apache pilot, so very connected to the military. And so he helped me get ready for my first sprint triathlon. And I always like to tell the story. His first call with me was, all right, so how long have you been running? It's been 13 years. Okay, it's a bit of time, but you can swim. I've never actually swam more than like a doggy paddle or kind of floating around in the water. Okay. What bike are you riding? I don't have a bike. And then he goes, we're off to a really great start. So that was the start of it. Is he helped me find a bike. He helped me get some training plans. He gave me direction, completed it. Felt really great because on that path, I learned things about myself through sport. And that became the next evolution of my thinking of mind body story and saying, holy crap, like I start realizing I quit when I run up this hill at 90% of the way up. Why? Because it's just 10% more and I just don't have what it takes to go that extra 10%. And I'm like, well, wonder if I do that in life too, because I felt like I was a quitter. And then I realized it was the last 10% is when I quit everything. And it's the tedium. It's the finishing touches. I want to go on to the next big thing, the next big adventure. And so I was like, dang, okay, what if I finish up this hill? Then I did. I finished going up that hill. And I was like, okay, well, if I can finish it on a run, then I bet I can finish it on this college report or whatever I'm doing. And sure enough, I could. And so fitness became this tool to see where my deficiencies lied in life, because how we do one thing, we do all things, that whole idea. And so I started to refine myself, and Eric saw that. And he said, hey, that worked pretty good for you, huh? I was like, yeah, it did. Hey, would you like to start a nonprofit? I said, absolutely. Let's help veterans do this too. And so Project Echelon, we set out to help people educate, equip, and empower them, veterans, through physical activity, endurance sport, and self-discovery. And so now we've been at it for, what would that be, a decade now? Nice. And have helped hundreds and hundreds of veterans. Our team is now international, and it's been amazing. And it's one of those things that I've had to learn about myself as a visionary versus an integrator. Eric Hill he's the executive director. And as he said, I'm the angel on his shoulder that tells him, what would Eric do in this situation? What would I do in this situation? Because I give him that spirit, he says. I give him the passion, and I had to accept that my role wasn't a day-to-day guy in this arena. It was, let me inspire the day-to-day guys. Let me give them the mission and the values and then empower them with it to go. It was the acceptance of who I am and how I serve this organization, and to stop being everything to everyone. Because in my film career, I tried to do it all. I was the editor, the graphic designer, the filmmaker, the DP, the actor. I tried to do everything, and it was hard. People called me a virtuoso, but I was miserable. But I appreciated the compliment, so I chased it. But that has grown, and partly that was hard for me because I wasn't an elite athlete and I wasn't as involved as I felt like I needed to be, even though I realized it was just, dude, you got to accept your role in this. And you have to get the evidence that shows how valued you are. Bro, you're not an accountant. You don't know numbers. You get into the board meetings and they start pulling up the financial sheets, and I'm like, oh my God, what is any of this? I don't understand. Let me talk about feelings and inspiration and motivation and the grand vision of where we can go and how we can get there, And so that's wonderful. And my modern myth is my outlet that I've realized is I tried to bring that into Project Echelon, and that's not the venue. We built for 6 years, and then I'm going to pivot finally because I've created a product. No, not the place for it. So I've taken that and separated it, gotten into jiu-jitsu because triathlon wasn't for me anymore, but I love fighting. And so that's my way to move my body, because you always have to have it. And my modern myth was that battle of, okay, if I'm all heady, I'm reading all of the books, why am I miserable? When was the last time you exercised? When have you moved besides from the bed to the shower to your chair downstairs to read? It's been a while. Imagine that, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, you've been training every day, but you haven't read a book. You haven't worked on writing. You haven't done any of your, self-reflection stuff. And now you missed one day of class and you're depressed. So why is that? You haven't been doing anything mental, have you? So there's always a imbalance. Yeah. And so my modern myth began that process of me telling myself, how do I find that balance? How do I assess the story I'm telling myself in that day? How do I give myself space to have those really brutal conversations just to get them out in the open so I can dissect them and tell myself a better story and charge into the next day with more positivity and empowerment? Because I think you always get to choose disempowered or empowered paths at any moment when we have this decision tree. And so once I got to a point where I had that figured out, this last year or two is when I officially launched. And now I help other people do that, because if it helps me, it's going to help somebody. Yeah. And we're doing webinars and individual coaching right now. I'm writing a book and I'm writing some ebooks to supplement that. So we're going to have more structure in it, because I haven't been as structured as I need to be and as focused on it because of the other things that I was building. But I've because
you're a visionary,
decided
that's hard to do for
you.
Because
that's right. There's some connection there, I guess. My wife will joke with me and say, like, wait, we'll have one conversation and she'll see my eyes go, And she goes, you just created a business, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to do that an awful lot, but then the logic side of my brain comes in and is like, no, you idiot, you don't have enough time for everything else already, right? So
beautiful.
That's where, I get to, I have I don't know if balance is even the right word for that. I have an ability to slap those things away. And in my role with our education company is I'm the integrator, opposite of my visionary. And every time Markian comes up with an idea, I'm like, dude, stop. Do not open your mouth in front of other people. Only open your mouth in front of me. That's it. You're not allowed to tell anybody else about your great ideas, because then people are going to want to chase these things or do something, and we got to stop. But it's great though, because I think that having those ideas and having that stuff bounce around is awesome, and it leads to things like my modern myth and Project Echelon. Because without, like, if it was just somebody like me, those things would have get created. So I think that's I love the fact that you're out there doing the opposite brained side of me and chasing these things down to be able to give back to people and be able to affect change in people's lives. So that's really awesome. And I I'm going to restructure this question that I would normally ask because I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. But how much exposure and how much involvement do your kids have in what you do for your business side of the house?
All of it.
Yeah.
I'm in my kitchen because our basement we're remodeling it. And so my office is now in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure they've ran past here, and I'm sitting here on my computer. They're doing homeschool there. They'll come in here, they'll watch what I'm doing, and I'll explain what this book is or what this concept is. And so they hear it all. And mm-hmm. I go on walks with, usually my eldest, and I'll talk to her about my struggles. Like, oh man, I'm having a hard time figuring this out. I don't know, what I'm doing wrong. I don't know. And then she'll even advise me sometimes because she's a very insightful girl. And I love giving her space to be insightful because she has made a difference in certain conversations. I'm like, I hadn't thought about it that way. Or she'll remind me because I've explained to her what I believe so much. She'll reflect my own message to me sometimes because I don't care who you are, how good of a coach you are, how dialed into your content you are, you forget. Because you're a human being. And she's been really good, my oldest, Ella, to remind me of that. So, and I always frame it with her. So this is clear. Yeah, nobody's done anything wrong. I don't hate myself. I'm not going to quit. I'm just saying right now it's tough. And when you love something, when you're called to something, you are because you keep coming back to it when all of the evidence says you should stop. Because you're not good enough and all these negative self-talk things come in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll walk away. I don't play chess because I can't stand it and I feel stupid. I also don't have any drive to learn chess, so that's okay. But this stuff, I'll be like, I'm banging my head against the wall. I can't solve it. But I keep trying because I have to. Well, that matters. And if you can find something like that, then you're probably supposed to go. And they have animation. They're great animators, but they get so frustrated with it. But then all of a sudden they'll go back to it. I got to figure this out. Mm-hmm. That's it. If you can find reasons and things that you are going to keep wrestling down until you solve them, well, now we've got something. If you learn how to go research and figure things out, and I demonstrate that, my wife demonstrates that to them, this is a life skill. More than any degree you're ever going to get, is if you're willing to go figure out how to find the information you need and wrestle this problem to the ground because you must, that's a wonderful life skill and it'll take you far. So they get to see all of it.
So I'm selfishly going to ask this question that, how much interaction do you have with your kids as they're doing that research? How did you kind of start that process? Like I've got my 9-year-old, we're homeschooling right now. And I'm teaching him, how to, the beginnings of research. And I keep trying to find that balance of, well, how much do I do the research for him so he can see how it's done the first time versus just explain the process and then let him go through the frustration of not quite getting it right, Yeah. I won't use the word balance because that's a misnomer, but like what sort of level of involvement do you put yourself through at the beginning stages of teaching them that research side?
Very minimal. I make sure they understand what boundaries are because the internet's a wild place. I remember the one time they were looking for a tail for a costume they wanted to design. And my youngest said, "What's this?" And it was page 3 of Amazon. And it was essentially a tail that was also would go in your butt. Mm. And so I was like, okay, did not expect that.
Yeah.
And then so our rule is page 1 of Amazon, nothing after page 1. So like everything else has been pretty fine. Like they're not going to get into troubled waters.
Yeah.
But I found the greatest teacher is frustration. And my eldest, when she was learning to read, and we do this different, we do it more like Denmark and in this idea of let the kids be kids. And every life stage has a different, capability. Mm-hmm. And I'm really out there with some of that stuff where I'm like, man, I didn't start living until 30, and I wasn't ready to go to college at age 18 and things like that. But the Germans, actually, I found out in elementary school, they have to decide if they're going to be a tradesperson or like collegiate path. And I'm like, that's way too early to know what you want to dedicate your life to. At any rate, my daughters didn't start learning to read till age 7. We just never did the alphabet and did the structure. We didn't teach them, but if they wanted to, we'd help them.
Yeah.
And there came a time where my daughter was playing Roblox, this video game, and I would read everything for her. and do everything for her. And then I was like, you know what? If you want to know what they say, you have to learn to read. And then within a couple months, she could read.
Mm-hmm.
So she found a reason. She found her pain point. And then she started to work really hard, relentlessly, harder than I could ever make her go. And it was self-directed. And then she learned how to read. Same with my other daughter. When she found a reason to ride her bike, I never pushed her on it. I tried to do the dad thing and it didn't really work for her. And she got frustrated and she's like, Daddy, I have to do it myself. And I said, okay, 2 years. It took her 2 years to ride the bike. And she wanted to quit. And I told her, you can quit. I'm never going to make you ride this bike. You have to understand that your kids are going to run around the neighborhood on their bikes and you're going to be chasing them on your feet and it's going to get real tiring. So there's a reason. Plus there's freedom. And she doesn't understand freedom that a bike's going to provide. She's never experienced it. But then her friends were riding bikes and she was running and she was out of breath. And then she's like, I want to try to figure out this bike. And I gave her the room to do it. It was frustrating because I just felt like a failing father because she wasn't doing it. She wasn't able to. And then all of a sudden she did it. And now she rides her bike and she loves it. But I didn't force her to. I believe if I forced her to and showed her this strict way to do it, then she has a different connection to the sport or the thing that she could have loved, but it's because daddy made me do it. Just like I didn't like cycling as a kid because my dad made me do it.
Yeah.
I like rollerblading. But in research, I find they have taught themselves Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator without me helping at all because they know why they want to do it. And as long as they know why, like school will teach them assignments about like a historical person they don't really care about and they struggle with research. Why? Because they don't care.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make them research that stuff. We'll have a conversation. I'll give them that information so they understand. And if that entices their curiosity, they'll go research it. So my involvement is ensuring they're only researching what they care about, not what they don't care about, because I don't want to build a connection of research sucks. Citation sucks. No, you understand why you want to get the information. Now go get it. And here's the areas you can go. Hands off. That's the way I've done it.
I really like that. I just recently started to do that a little bit. So it's first year homeschooling, trying to kind of figure out how to homeschool and also how to do the unschool part. Like how do I teach him how this is not actually school? So like I didn't grade anything for a long time. Like I'm not going to grade any of your stuff because he was already so emotionally tied to what a grade would be based off of his experience in school. He's in fourth grade now, and it was like every single grade meant something to his heart, right? Like it was a thing. So now even now I don't grade the spelling tests at all, right? Because anyways, this spelling is a little bit different, and how they're teaching is more rules based and trying to understand the rules. So you've never practiced these words. So how can you expect to know them? You're just learning these rules and understanding how the stuff goes. But there was some writing project in one of the books. I'm still mostly structured in some of the materials that we bought, and I looked at it and I was like, "No, like you're not going to write about this. What do you want to write about in this general theme? What do you want to write about? And he chose, and I was like, much better. Just go forth. And I got a much longer paper than I ever would have gotten based on what they were being told. So I'm really trying to figure out how to do that a little bit more. But because my logical brain sticks to things so much, like I'm just like, yeah, but the book has me doing these things this week. How am I not supposed to do these things this week? I'm ruining my child if I don't do these things this week, like because this is where it needs to be. And it's an exhausting time, especially with my first year. But I'm told that all the research I did beforehand was like, no, the first year you're going to feel like you're a failure and that you're not good at doing this and that you should have never done this. So I figure I'm just right on the same path as I'm told I'm supposed to be. So, oh man, it's tough though. Goodness.
Accurate.
But so what kind of desires do you have to, and do you teach at all entrepreneurship or business operating inside of your homeschool?
I think my wife does more of that, and we do it casually. My children both, my youngest for sure, I think she wants to be an entrepreneur. And so the only way I address it is with practical skills that you're going to have to learn. And that usually revolves around math because both my kids, they don't have a passion for math whatsoever. I didn't have a passion for it. And unfortunately, I think school, as we go, I have conferences with teachers because I have a different belief system around math. And it sucks because really what you're doing is you're trying to learn how to be a good college student through school. And if you don't want to go to college, these skills are not going to be functional for you. Like I remember doing pre-calculus and I still don't know why I did it. Like I don't know what the numbers were telling me to do unless I was going to be an engineer. So they're valuable, but not for me. And so for them, it's a conversation I have around why you need to know multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, decimals, percentages. And that in doing so, you might not like it, but this is why we do it. So I'm using it as a tie-in to show, again, like riding a bike. Well, it's going to get you around the neighborhood with your friends faster. So there's a reason, but then they have to come to that decision on their own. But I think their appeal in watching me as an entrepreneur is, I'm going to call it freedom, because I have a hard time working with a boss who has a different, really structured way of doing things, because I see things pretty different and my kids see things pretty different because they are versions of me and my wife. And my wife is a very, what do you want to call it? I don't know what to say. She's different. She's non-traditional. We're both non-traditional. She is a superintendent and project manager on high-end residential construction. She started 2 years ago and really didn't have a practical history in it, but had worked her behind off and researched and remodeled our home enough to the point where she was put in this incredible position that people don't get to with 20 years of experience, but she has what it takes. She has all of the qualities and she's better than a lot of the people who have done it for 20 years because she came at it with I want this, not I have to do this. So she's changing the game in a lot of ways. And so that's what we want to show our children, is that if you want to change the game, you got to do it for yourself. You have to create for yourself, because there's plenty of people that are conscientious and they honor that. And we need that. Like, I really want to be clear that I don't believe everyone should be an entrepreneur. Not everyone should be a CEO. We need people who are conscientious, who just want to be told what to do and they want to do a good job and they want to go home and have fun on the weekends. That's needed. But if that's not you, if that feels like suffocation, that's when you look at entrepreneurship. And that's kind of my only influence, is skill set, and when is that path for you versus not. And if it feels like working for someone is suffocation because it stifles creativity and freedom, you might want to think about how can that work. And then there's a whole different path we walk down.
Yeah, I got into entrepreneurship quite a bit later, not realize, like, so I switched to, I had 4 different jobs in the military, like extremely rare to bounce around that much. I had 2 different jobs as an enlisted guy, 2 different jobs as an officer. And I just kind of was like, man, I got to figure something else out. And then the more, the longer I was in, and then once I was basically tenured as an officer, it was like, as long as I don't kill anybody, I'm going to retire, no problem. Like, this is going to be easy. I started asking a lot more questions and I started pushing back a whole lot more. And that was not exactly appreciated in the military, as one may imagine, right? So that's what I really started to realize. I know, right? Yeah. That's what I really started to realize. I said, but maybe this is really not like the path for me. Maybe this is why I kept switching jobs. My brain was just always on to the next thing. I just want to like achieve something different, and I want to go after something different. And like, okay, well, I've succeeded at this. What's next? All right, well, I've accomplished those tasks. What's next? And it's time for me to always be going for something. And I love to be able to chase the new thing. And I want my, I want to try to pass that on to my kids without being like overbearing on it, right? So I love that you and your wife are both kind of in line on that, and you guys are both kind of outside of the box thinkers and pushing in that direction. So I think that's extremely beneficial, and I tell that to all of my partners and everything, and all in the businesses. Is like, look, we are not going to have a company full of people who really want to come up with these creative ideas and do all of these things. Like, we can't have a company full of those people. We're not going to be able to accomplish a lot of the tasks because they're going to be chasing down all these rabbits, right? So, we definitely need the people that are just like hard workers, and just like the military doesn't need just a bunch of trigger pullers. They need a bunch of people that can do all sorts of things and run financial reports and do all the stuff, But I want to go back to for me, the most important relationship besides one with God, the most important relationship one can have is the one with their spouse. And you said up at the very beginning, lighthouse and the light. I've got it written down. Lighthouse,
the lamplighter.
And the lamplighter. Yes, I want to kind of like talk to me about. I want you to talk to us about the relationship you have with your wife. What that lamplighter and lighthouse thing is, and then kind of like I'll stop there and I'll continue to ask questions after.
Yeah, this is It's quite the story. I would say one of the best stories I've ever written because I like to think of life that way. And meeting her, I kind of touched on, the moment. Okay, a lot of people say they don't know when they fell in love with their spouse. Like if I ask my wife, she kind of she says it's because, or not that she doesn't know when she fell in love with me, but she knew when she liked me and would say yes to a date. And that's when I showed her my rap album from high school. So
Ooh.
if that doesn't, yes, that's a whole different rabbit we can chase down. Yeah. So that's when she knew she liked me, but she doesn't know when she fell in love with me. But a lot of people say they can't, and I can. It was called John's Day because my brother-in-law now, he's Latvian. So they have this celebration called John's Day, and we're at the party and someone throws the fireworks into the fire. I didn't know it. Bop, 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 bop. I jump off the picnic table, embarrassed. I run around the house feeling all of the emotions of PTSD, and I'm crying. Not proud of myself, but I'm crying and embarrassed. Like I just ruined it with this girl who I'm really starting to fall for. And then all of a sudden, you would think I'd freak out about this, but she hugged me from behind and just held me really, really tightly. And I don't think she knew that's what I needed in that moment, but somehow she did because she didn't know anything about PTSD and how I could like elbow to the jaw and now I'm single. But she embraced me and I just melted. And I was like, I love this woman because she charged for me when people ran away. She saw me at my weakest and she was in. And I knew at that point that I was going to fight for her. And through fighting for her, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew I would do it. And as time went on, I fell apart. I was a respiratory therapist. We had a new baby. Our company that I was working for in home care gets bought out. And then I apply for a new job and I get that because that store is closing. The writing's on the wall. So I get out before that happens. And then I'm working this job and I get fired essentially because I have a mental breakdown and remember being downstairs just in a pile of dirty clothes that I was supposed to do laundry and I fell down and I just cried because I felt like the biggest failure in the world. And then my wife came down and found me and we sat and talked and I applied for a new job and I got a new job and I made it about 3 months and then I had another mental breakdown. It was a night shift in sleep lab for a respiratory therapy clinic. And again, I'm broken and they give me a week off, 2 weeks off, no pay. They're making me quit so they don't have to, so they don't have to give me severance. And so I bow out and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And she said, I've got this. I love photography. My dad had bought her a camera because she was in a college class at the time for photography. It was like an extra, what do you call it? An elective. And so my dad bought her his camera and that started her fascination with photography. So here's my dad who I'm still dealing with giving my wife a gift. And my wife actually was another huge reason I started to look at my dad differently because she didn't know them and she is a pusher. She's going to not let you off easy. And she didn't let my dad off easy. And my dad always had a soft spot when my sister would talk back to him. And so the same thing happened with my wife. And I was like, babe, you got to stop because he's going to freak out. All those old stories came up and she's like, I don't see that. And I'm like, no, of course you don't because you weren't there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's just being herself, and it actually helped my dad. And he started to be sweet to my mom. And it was super weird to see that. Like I'd never seen them kiss in my life until my wife made them kiss because we baked them a cake. And that was freaky to see. Really weird. But anyway, so that's the presence she has in my life. And she starts a photography business. And when I'm unemployed and we have our 2-3-month-old daughter and I become a stay-at-home dad at that moment and she starts making money, starts making a good business. And then she knew that I love film and was like, hey, do you want to do that? Do you want to make movies? And I'm like, yeah, why? It's like, well, let's get you a camera and then you can shoot weddings. And then so she gave me a camera and then I started working. And I started making films, which is something I wanted to be ever since I was a kid, but was told I couldn't do art. I couldn't do, it wasn't practical. And so she says, yes, you can. And I do. And she votes for me. She secretly sends me to this boot camp for film for a week-long thing. And I fly out to Seattle and I go to this course. And we didn't have a ton of money, but it was $500 and she was making it, I mean, her first year, she made $70,000. Didn't clear that obviously in the bank, but that was huge for us because it meant that we could live in our house.
Yeah.
And so she took the reins for like 3 years and I was a stay-at-home dad. And then we moved to Kentucky for film school. And she was the one that said, yeah, we can do it. Because she said she'd never leave Marshfield, Wisconsin, where we met. So that was big. She was growing. And then when we left to Kentucky, we grew together away from family dynamics and all that. And again, after a year and a half, I broke down. It was bad. That's when I was suicidal, and she saw I had a plan. And so then she became a caregiver for a moment. And, that was pretty powerful because I got to really dig into healing. And I remember getting to a place where I was ready to let her go and create and do. And she was afraid to leave me home with the kids because she didn't trust my emotional outbursts. And that sucked. And part of what I've realized is you have to be ready for your spouse to be honest and say she doesn't trust you with your own kids. And that's brutal. That's cold water. And she wasn't wrong, but I had to address that and I had to do something about it. And either I'm going to be mad at her, like, you need to get over this, or I need to accept the truth of that and be like, I have a problem and I'm going to bust my ass to fix it and to work through it. And sometimes that means being real sensitive and not getting stuff done. But I did, and I got to a place where I could finally send her off to go make friends because she didn't need to be around me all the time. And she still was afraid to, but I pushed her out. And so when I say she's my lighthouse, it's because she's always been able to see when I'm close to the rocky shore, when I'm not okay. Like last night, I was in a funk, and she goes, "You're not okay, are you?" No, I'm not at my best. And she's like, "You want to go up to bed?" Yeah, let's go spoon. let's just hold each other. Yeah. And we did that. Not sex. I'm saying literally.
Yeah.
Let's just go be intimately close to each other. So she's kind of keeping me aware. When am I getting off? Oh, you're going to make that business again? Are you sure? And it's painful. I don't like it. The rocky coasts are rocky and they're rough and jagged, but she alerts me to them, and I might be mad at her, but she's right.
Yeah.
I'm more mad because she's right. I'm like, no, I'm different. I'm changed. I can do this now. No, you're not. So she's always keeping me aware of when I'm going to crash and burn real hard. And then I putter away back into the ocean and try again. But as far as a lamplighter goes, I am her biggest cheerleader. She is mine. But I believe in her so deeply. I know her so well. She will always, or she would always, maybe not always. She used to not believe that she was capable of a career. She believed she was not that person. I believe she was. I think every marriage is composed of a couple different personality types, and that is the financial savvy, logistical one and the emotionally intelligent one. And as long as you have both of those relationships, you're going to be financially okay, and your kids are, and your spouse and each other is going to be emotionally connected. Yeah. Those are the two vital pieces. She's brilliant with finances. She is a hard worker, and I saw it in her. And when she was given the offer to take this job and move us from Marshfield to Milwaukee, a place we didn't know that was expensive, for a job she'd never done, she's like, "Can I do this?" And I'd say, "There's no way you can't." Because you don't meet resistance and roll over. You wrestle it to the ground until you've solved it. That's me lighting her lamp. That's me fueling her passion because she doubts herself like anyone would. But I know her and I fuel her forward, and that brightens her light, and she can go in, and I listen to all of her struggles at work. I listen to all of her successes at work, and I support. I'm an expansion tank, so she doesn't blow up, so she can boil over the top and not spill out everywhere. She can calm down and go back to work with more balance and say the things that aren't real but need to be said so that she can get to the real truth that's beneath that. And as long as I keep doing that, her lighthouse shines. And then she can continue her mission, which is, keep me aware of the rocks. So I'm keeping her fueled, keeping her lit. And in doing that, she's actually then able to help me in the way that she needs to help me. So it's reciprocity. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration. And that's just the metaphor that always has rung true in my heart about when I imagine us as our relationship dynamic, not being codependent, but interdependent.
So you mean to tell me that a husband and wife work together to grow together? Well, that's crazy. Wow. That's insane.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's the definition of love.
It's an interesting concept you have there. I mean, it's one way to think about it, I guess. But no, I really like that a lot. It's I look at my relationship with my wife, and I would be nowhere near where I am today if it wasn't for the relationship with my wife. I mean, right down to a very similar thing, breaking down in the kitchen over some, Afghanistan stories I had told myself, and it was it would not have gone the same way had she not been there. Like, there's just there's no direction I can go that I can't look at her and see the fingerprint of her on where my life is now from the moment I met her. I like the lighthouse side of the house, what you're saying there. My wife definitely makes sure that I'm looking at things in a different perspective than I ever would have. Like, there was one moment just recently where I was like, hey, because again, logical brain, everything comes down to logic. I don't think about the emotional side of things 9 times out of 10. Every time I have leaned on any of the emotional side, other than with my kids, it's gone wrong. So it's always taught me not to use my emotions anyways, right? So I was looking at her and I was like, man, market's gone this way, the rates are this way, rent is this, blah, blah, blah. Let's see what we can get to sell the house. If we can make X amount of money if we sell the house, then, it's worth it to me. And then she comes in and she's like, well, like, everything that she had mentioned was all the emotional side that I'd never thought about. Hey, I'm going to be retiring in a year and a half. I'm going to be, we're still in the middle of homeschool, right? In the middle of the homeschool year, we've got all this stuff and all this. I was like, yeah, but numbers. Yeah, but numbers, dear. Like, I'm not sure. Dagnabbit, you make a lot of sense. Like, we balance each other out so well, and it's such a good time to be able to, and that's one of the many reasons I say that's the second best relationship you could pick in your entire life. One is your relationship with Jesus, and the other one is your relationship with your spouse, because those two, like, are the only thing that keep me out of a world of trouble that I would be in myself. So, but Eric, are there anything before we wrap this up? I want to kind of hand it over to you. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you really want to cover? Are there any questions that you have for me? I always try to tell people before these is that I want it to be a conversation where we go back and forth, and I always end up just asking a bunch of questions and instead of passing it back over. But are there anything that you would have for me, or anything that you want to bring up to the audience that you haven't been able to cover yet?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple things. One is a clarifying in saying that my wife and I still have mucho conflict. We have fights and we have arguments, and it's not, even with the lighthouse, if you look at a lighthouse, it'll blind you if you're close enough. And that hurts, And so we get a little bit sideways sometimes, but we never get so sideways because we have boundaries we won't cross. Mm-hmm. And I've also partly established that because she wants to hammer it out. She wants to figure it out right now. But I got to a place where I said, we have to stop because everything I say is not true and hurtful. So it's a defensive response, and I don't want to say those things to you. So I need a minute. And then she would give me time to go away. I'd watch a YouTube video, Netflix, whatever, think about it, figure out why I'm feeling the way I am. And then I'd come back, and her request is, you can go as long as you promise we'll talk about it. Yeah. I said, I promise. So that's what we do. And we've gone to bed angry. We've done all that. And partly it's because we don't want to be up at 2 a.m, pissed at each other, finally resolve it. And she has to get up at 5. Anyway, so we've kind of been a little interesting path, but I just wanted to articulate that, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And sometimes she knows my brain, I have a brain injury, and I forget about it. So it frustrates her because I think I have no limitations, but then she knows the ones that I do because I forget about them. And sometimes she'll be like, I do get frustrated with you because I just want you to figure it out. And after 13 years, I understand that. And I'm trying, but we get frustrated with each other, even though we love each other deeply. And I think that's part of it, because love is the relentless dedication to the spiritual development of yourself or another. So that's how I love myself, is continuing to grow spiritually. And that's how I love her, is by continuing to empower her to do the same. And as long as we're doing that, we're solid. We're on the highway, but if we get off of that, where I don't care about her growth and I don't care about mine, or she's holding me back from my growth, or I'm holding her back from hers, or we don't care about growth, she's growing and I don't care about it, then we're in trouble. And that's where things go wrong. Because it's about us, not me. So there's that. And
Does
then
that
I
mean
also
you're
wanted
not
to
a
ask,
perfect dad too? Is that what that means?
Oh, well, no.
Okay,
I'm
so you are
amazing.
perfect. Okay.
I only fail with my wife. Yeah, my kids will probably happily tell you that I'm not perfect and that I'm annoying in many ways, because sometimes your kids don't want to hear, what did you do to instigate this fight? Yeah. And I get it wrong too. Sometimes I get it wrong or mishear things. And as long as we come back to and solve it, we'll be all right.
Yep.
But yeah, I embarrass myself plenty, and not in fun ways, but who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing I guess I'd ask you, because this is where I'm at with my business,
Mhm.
is I need integration. I need an integrator. So I don't know where your strengths lie in that conversation, but how much do you think there's a priority on solidifying a brand, from colors to verbiage to presentation to having books, having pamphlets, having classes, having all of these things figured out, versus just going forward and putting out a message and trying to build that way? Like, I'm just curious from your perspective, what you've seen works or holds you back from making progress based on overthinking the brand or underthinking it.
So based on what you're saying, it sounds like you're already kind of going down the route of creating all these things and trying to get all this stuff created beforehand.
Mhm.
And I would say that you definitely need to push out the information first, right? As it's coming, not necessarily first, but people have to know you could build it, because what's going to happen is you're likely to keep going down that path and say, yeah, well, I still need this one more product or this one more thing. I've got this other idea that just came up, which is why you need that integrator in there to say, no, like, these 4 things are already ready. Let's push them out and get them going while we're growing the other stuff in the background, while all your ideas are flowing. That we need, like, operations need to happen in order to be an actual functional business. So let's let the operations go. Let your ideas keep flowing. Let your creative juices keep going, but let somebody else kind of run the operation side of the house so that things can actually go out and emails can be sent and products can be pushed out, and products can be finalized, because that's another, another thing that maybe not you, but a lot of visionaries tend to have, is like, it's got to be perfect before it gets sent out. And sometimes, sometimes that's just not true at all. Like, that 80% solution just needs to be done. Let's just get it out, to make sure that people can get it. And then we'll improve it as we keep going. So I'd say find somebody who you definitely align with well, that has more of those opposite characteristics of you, to help push all of that stuff out, and do it sooner rather than later, because they're going to, hopefully, if you guys have had the right conversations, and you guys, especially if you're using EOS itself, as we're using visionary and integrator words, if you're using EOS, the system, to kind of create all of this stuff, you guys will be in line with the outcome of the company. You guys will be in line with your core focus. You'll be in line with your core values of the company. And if you guys are in line with those things, then that integrator is going to be helping you execute these things to make sure that they're out there in the ether, so people can keep growing while you're creating all of those ideas and going through. So I'd say jump on it, but date the person before you get married to them. Make sure you do align with all of those things, core values. You understand what they're doing. You understand who they are, before you go and bring them onto the team. But I don't know if that actually answered your question, but
that does, because I get stuck in, I need the logo to be perfect.
Yeah.
It has to be just this powerful image, and the colors, I'm like, God, that might be the wrong shade. And so you're dealing with hex codes and stuff. And I know in my mind that it's not what's going to make people hear the message, but I'm so connected to it that I think the integrator part, I have so little of it. I can create and write. Like, I love writing, I love speaking, but the strategizing of what to release first, how to build a framework that's more cohesive, more following versus free form conversation, which is my favorite thing. It's realizing, I do need a partner to bring in. So I'm going to start dating.
Yes, as you should. As you should. It's a tough balance, right? Because you like, to go to what you were saying, like, we've got 2 people on our team, like the visionary, very much so, like, cares about the pixels, like what exact shade are we using, where's this stuff at, and then our marketing guy, same thing. So like, our marketing guy was complaining about the way some slide looked on something, and then sent it over to Mark Young, the visionary, and I'm on the thread, and I'm looking at it, and I was like, I literally can't tell which one's the good one and which one's the bad one. I have no idea which one you guys were even complaining about, because it wasn't a context. It was just, look at these things. Like, one of these is horrendous. It should be looking more like the other one. And I was like, I don't know which one's horrendous and which one should be. I don't understand, because I just couldn't see that. Like, it didn't make any sense. And I was like, I think I'm like probably 70% of the people out there. they're not going to care. They just want the product. They just want you to change their life. And changing their life does not mean that this is the perfect right shade of orange, or the perfect right shade. It just doesn't, that's not going to change their life.
What?
So I know. I'm sorry, Eric, but it's true. It's true.
Reminds me of the fight with the spouse that says, you should care more about this. I'm sorry, but I don't. I don't care.
I'm sorry.
You should.
I'm going to shit all over myself because I have no care in the world.
Right.
I don't know. Oh, man. But yeah, if I mean, let me know if there's anything I can do to help on your search, on your journey. If you have questions for me after this, I'm happy to kind of chat, get on another call just to talk about visionary integrator, that type of stuff, and my experience there. Not that I'm an expert by any means, but happy to help along wherever I can. But Eric, it was absolutely a pleasure chatting with you. I thank you so very much. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, reach out to you one way or another, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Best way is on Instagram. DM me, whatever, at my_modern_myth. And otherwise, my website is mymodernmyth.com. Those are the two best ways. And there's a contact form. And I am available to answer any questions that you might have.
Fantastic. And if there's any veterans out there who are interested in the Project Echelon, how do they get in touch with that?
We can go Instagram at Project Echelon Racing, as well as Project Echelon Racing. No. ProjectEchelon.org on the website.
There you go.
And Echelon is ECHELON, which is it's the only regret we have about it is making it such a complicated echelon and all that stuff. But it's a beautiful metaphor.
Awesome. I really like it. Thank you again very much, Eric, for jumping on. I hope and I'm sure that everybody got something out of that. But please follow Eric. Go over and find him. Reach out to him, especially if the two of us being both combat veterans, that is something that we're both passionate about on this side. So especially if you're going down that route, reach out, find out how they can help. But thank you again very, very much, Eric. And we will talk to you again soon. So everybody on the next one.